Vayomer Hashem Zakas Sdoim va'Amora ki Rabba. The outcry of Sdoim and Amora is great. V'chatosam ki kovda ma'oid. Their sin is great, is grave. That's what the pasuk says. It seems like it was a terrible place, Sdoim and Amora. The pasuk says, "Va'anshei Sdoim ro'im v'chatoim la'Hashem ma'oid." But the pasuk does not tell us what was the problem in Sodom. What did they do wrong? It doesn't say anywhere in the parsha. But in Yechezkel, Kapitel Tes Zayin, it says, "Hine ze hoyo avoin Sodom achoiseich geoin sveas lechem." They had pride. They had an abundance of food. V'shalvas hashkeit hoyolo. They had the serenity. Uliv Noiseah, the surrounding cities also did. V'yad oni ve'evyon loy hechzika. But they did not support poor people. Seems like the problem with Sodom is that they didn't give tzedakah. Seems to us surprising that because they held back from doing chesed, the Torah calls them ro'im v'chatoim la'Hashem ma'oid. Bnei Noach aren't even mitzvah on the mitzvah of tzedakah. The Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim Perek Yud, Ben Noach sherotzo la'asos mitzvah mishar mitzvahs haTorah. If he wants to do a mitzvah haTorah kedei lekabel schar, ein moinen oisei la'asos oisei kilchos. So we don't hold him back from doing it properly. V'im hevi oilo mikabel mimenu nosan tzedakah mikabel mimenu. We allow a guy to give tzedakah, but he's definitely not mechuyev in giving tzedakah. So how could it be that for the Anshis not giving tzedakah, we consider them roim v'chatzon l'Hashem oid? The Rabbeinu Bachye in this week's parsha says, "Va'afal pi sheloi nitna Torah adayin," even though the Torah wasn't yet given. Hine hatzdaka min hamitzvos hamuskalois v'davar metuavhu. It's a disgusting thing. Sheyira adam esminoi. A person should see a fellow human, mutal bera'ov v'hu asher v'saveya mikol toiv ve'einem merachem olav lahoshiv es nafshe. So it's a horrible thing. Even though the mitzvah wasn't yet given. Alachas kama v'chama al mishehu me'umosoi. All the more so somebody that's from his people, from his nation. V'dor imoy bir achas, and he lives with him in the same city. Valkain ibdom HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'anshei Sodom shehoyu moininoisa. So from the Rabbeinu Bachya, it seems that Bnei Noach are mitzvah on tzedakah because it's a mitzvah muskelas, and as the Rabbeinu Nissim Goyen in his Akdamat Shas says, the chol ha-mitzvah shem tluyim b'svore u'be'uvnes delibo kvar hakoil mischayvim b'hem min hayoim. Okay, so Bnei Noach are mitzvah on tzedakah, and it's not a pretty thing not to help Bnei Umosai, Bnei Iroi, but is it at kedei kach that it's chatosom ki kovda ma'oid, and we describe them as ro'im v'chatoim la'Hashem ma'oid? So, in the Sefer HaKedah, this week's parsha, he has a whole arichas dvarim about this, and he says, "B'toich hadvarim, v'hinei be'emes zois hoisoch atas doim uvnoisel, ki hinei heim lo yichotu b'cheit hatayva bilvad, ke'orim asher yesh lam chukim v'mitzvos tovim ve'enam oisem oisem." It wasn't like they had chukim u'mishpatim tovim, and they were greedy, and therefore they didn't carry out the chukim u'mishpatim tovim. They were out for themselves, and therefore they didn't obey the laws. No, he says, "Gam loy hoyo dai lohem v'shehoyu ir prutza ein chayma mishum das v'nimus yosher." It's not just they didn't have proper laws. No, it was much worse than that. Aval kvar nifsido haskolosam b'tachlis ha'efsid In other words, they had laws. It wasn't that they didn't keep the laws. They made laws that were wrong. And what were their laws about, says the Baal HaAkedah? ולזה בוחרו באויס המידה של שלי, שלי ושלך, שלך. באויסי בינוינס, שאומר שהיא מידס דוין, לא בתורס מידה, אלא בתורס דס ונימוס. אחס דוסוי, להמתיר, המהנה לזולוסוי. Anyway, to make a long story short, I won't read you his whole lesson. What he says is that sheli, shelcha, sheli, sheli, v'shelcha, shelcha, the Mishnah says, zamida beinoinus. The yesh omrim zamida zdon. What you can understand from this Bala Akeda is that how could it be that some people say it's a midah beinoinus and some people say it's a midah zdon? So what he's trying to say is it's a midah beinoinus if you're that way because you care about your own money and you're not enough willing to help others. That's not the end of the world, but if you make it into a shita, if you make it into a philosophy, if you make it into a way of life, if you make it into a law, that sheli sheli v'shelcha shelcha, that's midas doim. You could say al derech hatzachos, it's a midah beinoin, it's v'yesh oimrim, it's a midas doim. If you tell others to keep this, it's a midas doim. Because the pshat is like this. If you make it into a law, so it's not about the fact that I can't part with my money. I mean, because I don't have any issue with you parting with your money. So why would I make a law that nobody should part with their money? It must be that there's a deeper kilkul over here. It's not just greediness. There's something, it's not just that I'm stingy. But avada, we need to understand. And actually the Gemara says that zenen of zelichase is a midas doim. Zenen of zelichase is a midas doim. No. What does zenen of zelichase mean? That I don't want you to be nene, not because I'm going to be chassid. It's not costing me anything. I'm just against you being nene. So that's the yesh oimrim, that's a midas doim. In other words, sheli sheli v'shelcha shelcha could be in two ways. It could be that because I want that sheli should remain sheli, therefore you're going to have only shelcha shelcha. That's one approach. That's midah beinoinus. But there's another way that shelcha shelcha, you should only have what's yours, and therefore sheli will remain with sheli. In other words, it's not because I care about keeping what I have, but it's because I don't want you to have what's not yours. But them is that for the question. So, what was the side of this shita and this philosophy of the Amshi saying? Why were they so against tzedakah? Why did they make a law that nobody should share? And that everybody should have only what's his, and nobody should help anybody else. I mean, what was behind this? You know, that in the Nevuas Yechezkel there's a fascinating pasuk that says, "V'shavti es shvishen," that a day will come that the Rebbeinu Shalom will return their captivity as shvis sdoim uvnoiseha, that they will be redeemed in the La'asid Lavoi. The day will come when Sdoim will be redeemed. What is that supposed to mean, that a day will come and Sdoim will be rebuilt? Why is this an afur? Why is this a haftacha? Why is this a prophecy that Sdoim will be rebuilt? You know that on the pasuk in this week's parsha, Kum kach es ishtecha v'shtei bnei secha hanimtsois. The Bereshis Rabbah says, it's a very strange expression, hanim tzois, that are found to be in Zdoim. Your daughters that are found to be in Zdoim. The Medrash says, Rabbi Yossi bar Yitzchak amar shtei metzias, rusa moyavia v'namo ha'amonis. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, matzasi David avdi, heichon matzasiv b'Zdoim. Now, the word metzia represents that it's kind of a surprise to find him there. I mean, it's not the obvious place for David HaMelech to be found in Sdoim, because Rus HaMoyavia is in Sdoim. But on the other hand, there must be a reason that David HaMelech is actually found in Sdom. So if Sdom was all negative, what's the meaning of Matzasi David Avdi Heichon Matzasi B'Sdom? You know, there's a very complicated, difficult pasuk in Eov that says Paratz Nachel Me'im Gor Hanishkochim and Iregel. In any case, Rashi over there says that the Anshe Sdom are called Nishkochim Mini Regel. The Anshe Sdom had a meaning, it's a Medrash Chazal, that if an Oireach came to town, if he was tall, they would put him into a short bed and they would cut his legs to match the size of the bed. And if he was short, they would put him into a longer bed and they would pull his legs until he fit the bed. So I want to know, what's the idea? What were they trying to say with this? The Akedah actually says that all the achzorius that they did in Sdom was just in order to enforce the anti-chesed rule. It wasn't that they were cruel people. They were cruel only in order to enforce the anti-chesed rules, and that's why the Akedah says, the pasuk in Yecheskel says that the avla of Sdom is yad ani ve'evyon lo yechzika. So how do we understand this mitas Sdom? I think the pshat is pashut. In Sdom they held that intervening in the sidrei ha'olam by giving tzedakah is going against the will of God. Because some people are meant to be poor, some people are meant to be rich. Who are you to mess up the Seder Olam? Not only that, every individual ought to deal with his challenges on his own. And he needs to be left to his own devices in order that he develop properly. And if I'm going to give him a handout, I'm actually crippling him. He should stand on his own feet. Now, what they were trying to say with his bed is like this. Just like everybody understands that some people are short and some people are tall. And it's ludicrous to make everybody equal, to try to make the short taller and the taller shorter, right? Just like we understand that, they claimed, it doesn't make sense that the rich should give money to the poor. And everyone should be equal, because people are not equal and they're not meant to be equal. And everybody has to be left up to his own devices. He should deal with his reality. So you see that the haficha, and that's the idea, and that's the idea of shali, v'shalcha. That's the way it is. That's the way of the world. It's not because I'm greedy. It's not because I'm stingy. It's not because I want money for myself. It's because this is me and that's you. And if that's your situation, you should deal with that situation on your own. Now, the haficha of Sdom came behemshich to the milah of Avram, as you see at the beginning of the parasha. Avram's milah is halech lefonai v'heyei tomim, which means that you shouldn't just be the way you were naturally created, but you're meant actually to go beyond that. So the thing is like this. A man was created in oral, not that he should remain in oral, but that he should have the opportunity to be mashlim himself, as the chinuch says in mitzvah base, v'rotzo li'os ha'ashlama al yedei ha'adam. V'loy b'ro'oi sholei mi beter lirmois elov ki kasher tashlum tzuras gufoy al yodoi kein b'yodoi lahashlim tzuras nafshoy be'heksher puloisav. And the Makor Advarim is in the Medrash. So the Medrash says, the Medrash Tanchuma in Parshas Vayera, that Tarnasropus Harosh Yisro Bakiva Eza Maisim Noim. What's prettier? Who creates better creations? Like Kodesh Baruch Hu or Basav Adam? Amalei Basav Adam. Rabbi Akiva said, Rabbi Akiva, who's the Shorish of Teresh Shabbat Peh, he says, listen, man's creations are better. So anyway, Amalei Lama Atem Mulin, why are you Gemalit? Amalei Ani Hayisi Idea Shal Davazat Shailani. I knew that that's what you're going to ask me. Well, that's why I already preempted the question, and I said that my sibnei Adam are noim mishel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hevi Rabbi Akiva, to demonstrate this idea, he brought shibolim ugluskois. He brought raw wheat and he brought baked bread. Amaloi elu ma'aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creations, and elu ma'aseh they Adam. So tell me, ein elu noim yoisem in hashibolim? Rabbi Akiva said the bread is not better than the shibolim. Amaloi tenes tropes im hu chafetz b'mileh. Lama eino yoitza havlad mohul mimei. If the Rebbeinu Shalom wants muhulim, why isn't the child born a mohul? Amalei Rabbi Akiva v'lama srora yoitza imoi v'hu tolui beimoi choy that you have to cut the cord. Umashat oime lama eino yoitza mohul officially nosna Kodesh Baruch Hu samitzvus liyisrael ela litzroif oisam bahem v'lachein amad David imras Hashem tzrufa. So mitzvah smila symbolizes the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be mashlam ourselves, and the natural state of man is not what ought to be. And man needs to tamper with ma'aseh bereishis. Man needs to intervene. We need to change things. We shouldn't leave them as is. Just because he was born poor doesn't mean that we should keep him poor, but we should intervene. We shouldn't think that that's going against the divine plan, because part of the divine plan is that we should create, we should correct, we should improve, and we should change. And really, this shakla v'tarya between Rabbi Akiva and Tanas Rasha, we find also legabe the mitzvah of tzedakah, the same shakla v'tarya that they had legabe the mitzvah smila, they have legabe the mitzvah tzedakah. The Gemara in Bava Basra and Afyud says, "V'zu shaila shal Tanas Rasha Rabbi Akiva." If Hashem likes aniyim, mipnei ma einoi mefarnesam, why doesn't He give them food? In order that we should have the schus. Anyway, he says no. Giving them money is mechayiv yisganim. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants them poor, and you're making them rich. Anyway, he gives them a different marshal. But we see that the opposition to the mitzvah smila and the opposition to the mitzvah tzedakah are both rooted in the same idea, that we should leave things as they are. They're God's creation, and we shouldn't intervene. And that's why is immediately after the Hisalech Lefonai Ve'yesamim, after Avraham Avinu was Mekayim, the mitzvah smila, appears his askus in Achnosas Orchim, which is the mitzvah of tzedakah, which is about intervening with the Sidrei Ha'olam. In other words, improving on how the world is as is, just like when we are mal, we're improving the Bria as is, because the fact that they're aniyim doesn't mean that they should be that. The kashim ipnei ma einoi mefarnesam, the teretz is, k'dei litzroif b'henas abrius, just like we say that a person is not born a mohul in order that he should have the opportunity to be mal himself. Now, you know, that's a Mishnah in Avos. In Avos, we say that sheli shelcha v'shelcha sheli amoritz. Somebody says mine is yours and yours is mine, he's an amoritz. He's an amoritz sounds like he's not super bright. I mean, but it really sounds like a total stupidity. It doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, why should somebody say what's mine is yours and what yours is mine? What is that supposed to mean? But the emes says we find l'chayra this midah by light. Why? Because on one hand we see that light was moisa nefesh fachnos asarachim, as you see by Arichas in the parsha. But on the other hand, vayihi riv bein roya mikne Avram ubein roya mikne light. Rashi says l'fisha hoyu royam shaloit rishoim umarim behemtam bezdois acherim v'roya Avram moichichem oisem ala gezel. So you see that light was a shali shalcha. He was a tremendous machnas. On the other hand, his royam were gazlanim. So he was a shalcha shali. So what does this stand for? Shali shalcha. In other words, Lot didn't suffer from the Sdoim syndrome. He wasn't a Shali Shali v'Sholcha Sholcha, but he was going Shali Sholcha v'Sholcha Shali. Where does this come from? Sometimes people have difficulty with the strict rules, with a harsh reality of life, and boundaries. People have trouble with boundaries. They have rachmanis on other people, but also on themselves. They give, but they also take. This chesed is actually the antithesis to the midah of ansheis doim. That's the chesed lo memchatos. The ansheis doim, aroim v'chatoim sheli v'sholcha sholcha, and then there's the other chesed, but the wrong kind of chesed, which comes not from a place of strength, not from a place of giving, but from a place of weakness, from a place of shali shelcha, because I have rachmanis on you, but I have rachmanis on myself also. Shelcha shali. When I need, I take. Yeah. So really, the point is that the derech hayosher is that shali shelcha v'shecha shelcha. In other words, that's the chesed that comes from a place of strength. I don't need you. I don't want to take from you. I respect the boundaries, but I cross that boundary in order to give. That's the chesed that Eden are expected to have. You know, the Torah in the beginning of Choshen Mishpat says, brings the Mishnah of us, Reb Shimon Gamliel al shloishet dvarim ha'olam kayon, al hadin ha'emes v'hasholem. And he brings the Rabbeinu Yoina that says, what is this Mishnah saying? Al shloishet dvarim ha'olam kayon. Ein pirusho shebishvil gimel dvarim elu nivra ha'olam. Doesn't mean that the world was created for these shloishet dvarim. Shari b'tchilas ha'perek al shloishet dvarim ha'olam oimed. Torah avoiding milas chasadim. And ve'enam oisam shezoicher kan. So he says that there are two different things. There's oilam oimed, that which means what the world was created for. Oilam kayom means the world can't exist without these things. In other words, the world was created for chesed, Torah avoiding milas chasadim, but without boundaries, just milas chasadim, the oilam can't be kayom. So the chesed has to come on top of those. We need to respect those boundaries and go beyond them. So Mamela, what am I saying? That the emes is that the midah of shali v'sholcha sholcha of the ansheis doim is an important midah, because we need to know what's mine and what's yours. If we don't respect those boundaries, then it's shali sholcha v'sholcha shali. So there has to be a boundary of shali v'sholcha sholcha. And from there we have to ascend to the midas hachesed lefnimi shur sadin, but we have to recognize what the shur sadin is. And I would say even more that we do need to use the midas daim with regards to ourselves, and that's the midah of sholcha sholcha. I need to internalize the idea that my self-actualization is dependent on not needing others. And I don't have rachmanis in myself, and I'm not mevata to myself. And I deal with the realities of my life with my own devices, and I don't become a burden on others. So midas doim has a mukim, not legabe someone else, but legabe myself. So the thing is like this: do us Hashem ki kulam yedu oisi lemiktanon va'ad gedoylom. In the oilam atikun, be'emes, every individual will actualize himself by himself, and he will realize his entire potential without any help, and therefore there will be no room for that kind of chesed. And therefore we're saying v'shafti ashvisen, In other words, the shleimus of Olam Chesed Yibana will actually be when the world will be able to be miskayim with Midas Hadin, as it was all over Machshava, Livrei Yasoilam, but Midas Hadin. But till then, we should apply the Midas Daim only for ourselves and not Chas V'Sholem for others. So Matzasi David Avdi Bezdoim is because the ultimate redemption is actually going to put the Midas Daim in the Olam HaTikun in the right way, which is that every individual will self-actualize and there will be no need that one will have for the other, as the pasuk says, "V'lo yilamdu oidish esreyehu," but ki kulam yedu oisi, and everybody will actualize his own potential without any help of others, because it's only in this world that the Rebbeinu Shalom wants litzroif v'henes abriyas, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving us the opportunity to correct the bria that's imperfect. But when the bria will reach its perfection, over there, Sdoim is right. I mean, Sdoim is saying that what is ought to be, and God's creations are perfect. They're not. And there's a reason why they're not. It's to give us an opportunity to perfect them. But in the Olam HaTikun, Be'emes the Maaseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu will reach the point of perfection. And over there, Sdoim is right. And that's the V'shafti es Shvisen, that Sdoim will be redeemed.